Everyone thinks Canva succeeded because it was simple. That's not the real story. The real story? Melanie Perkins spent years obsessing over one thing: user empathy. She didn't just want to build software. She wanted to understand frustration, every rejected investor call, every failed demo. She was learning what people actually needed. Here's what nobody talks about. Canva wasn't built by designers for designers. It was built by someone who watched designers and saw their students crying. Someone who understood that behind every business opportunity lies human emotion, raw, unfiltered struggle that most entrepreneurs never bother to see. But what happens when you actually pay attention to that struggle? Melanie Perkins saw students crying over Photoshop and saw something else entirely. University of Western Australia, 2006. Picture a computer lab filled with bright students. They're taking graphic design classes. They should be excited. Instead, they're staring at Adobe Photoshop like it's written in ancient Greek. Melanie Perkins walks between their desks. She's their tutor. She's supposed to help them master the software. But what she's witnessing breaks her heart. A student tries to resize an image. Simple task, right? Wrong. The image stretches, gets blurry, disappears completely. The student's face crumples. "I'm just not creative," she whispers. Another student spends 20 minutes trying to change text color. He can't find the right menu. His project is due tomorrow. Panic sets in. These aren't beginners failing at advanced techniques. These are smart people. They understand design concepts. They have great ideas. But the software, it's destroying their confidence. One by one, Melanie watches them give up. The tears come next. Here's what most tutors would do. They'd teach the software better, show more shortcuts, create better tutorials, make students practice until muscle memory kicked in. But Melanie, she did something different. She started asking why. Why did the software have to be this hard? Why couldn't design be intuitive? Why were brilliant students calling themselves not creative when the problem wasn't creativity, it was complexity? Most people don't know this about Melanie. She studied psychology before switching to design. This changes everything. She wasn't just seeing technical problems. She was seeing human behavior, the frustration patterns, the moment confidence died, the exact second when people decided they weren't designers. Her psychology training revealed something powerful. People weren't failing because they lacked talent. They were failing because the tools demanded expertise before allowing expression. Think about it. You need to master hundreds of features just to create something basic. Melanie started timing her students. How long to change a font? 5 minutes. How long to add a simple border? 10 minutes. How long to give up completely? Usually less than an hour. She was watching creativity die in real time. But then came the insight that changed everything. Complexity wasn't a feature, it was a barrier. Adobe built tools for professionals who spent years learning every menu and shortcut.
This part of the program is sponsored by The Tria, oasis of comfort with a touch of luxury. Visit thetria.com. Your dream home vibe is just a scroll away.
But what about everyone else? What about small business owners who needed a quick logo? Students creating presentations? Parents making birthday invitations? There were millions of them, maybe billions, all avoiding design tasks because the tools were too intimidating. They'd hire expensive designers for simple projects, or worse, they'd create nothing at all. Here's where Melanie's psychology background became crucial. She realized something Adobe had missed. People don't want to learn design software. They want to feel like designers. There's a huge difference. Learning software is about mastering complexity. Feeling like a designer is about expressing ideas easily. Imagine if writing required you to understand printing press mechanics before you could write a letter. That's what design software had become. The tool was more complex than the task it was supposed to help with. Melanie started sketching ideas. What if design could be as easy as dragging and dropping? What if templates did the hard work while people focused on their message? What if you could create something beautiful in minutes instead of hours? Her students became her first test subjects. She'd show them mock-ups of simpler interfaces. Their eyes would light up. If design worked like this, they'd say, "I could actually do it." That's when she knew she was onto something massive. The traditional design world would hate this idea. Professional designers spent years mastering complex tools. They saw that expertise as valuable. But Melanie saw something else. She saw millions of people who didn't want to become professional designers. They just wanted to solve problems that required design. This psychological insight became the foundation of everything that followed. While Adobe focused on adding more features for experts, Melanie focused on removing barriers for everyone else. While competitors celebrated complexity as power, she saw complexity as the enemy of creativity. What started in that computer lab wasn't just frustration with software. It was the recognition of a fundamental human need. People want to express themselves visually. They want to communicate ideas beautifully. They want to feel creative and capable. The tools were preventing all of this from happening. The crying students taught Melanie something that would become worth $25 billion. The biggest market in design wasn't professional designers. It was everyone who'd given up on being one. But understanding the problem was just the beginning. Now she had to prove her theory could work in the real world. At 19, most people are worried about exams. Melanie Perkins was secretly running the most important user experience experiment of her life, 2007. Fusion Books launches quietly in Perth, Australia. To everyone else, it looks like simple yearbook software. Schools can upload photos, add text, create basic layouts. Nothing revolutionary. But Melanie knows this is something much bigger. She's not trying to build the best yearbook company in Australia. She's trying to crack the code of intuitive design. Every feature decision becomes a test. Drag and drop interface? Not because it's trendy, because she watched students struggle with complex menus. Pre-made templates? Not because she's lazy, because she saw people stare at blank pages for hours. One-click effects? Not because it's simple, because she timed how long it took students to apply basic formatting. Here's what nobody realizes. Each school using Fusion Books becomes her laboratory. She watches their behavior like a scientist. Every click gets analyzed. Every moment of confusion gets noted. Every spark of delight gets studied. When users upload photos and immediately start arranging them, success. When they spend 10 minutes looking for the save button, problem to solve. The drag and drop system reveals something fascinating. People understand physical movement better than abstract commands. Moving a photo feels natural. Navigating through file, edit, transform, scale feels like punishment. Melanie starts mapping these insights. Physical metaphors work. Menu hierarchies don't. She discovers user patterns that will later change everything. Teachers love templates but want to customize them. Students prefer starting with something that already looks good. Parents get excited when they can create something professional looking quickly. Each observation gets filed away for future use. But then comes the twist nobody sees coming. Fusion Books expands beyond Australia. New Zealand first, then France. Most people think it's about growing the yearbook business. Wrong. It's about testing design theories across different cultures. New Zealand teaches her about simplicity preferences. French users show her color choices vary by culture. Each market becomes a new data source. Do drag and drop interfaces work the same way everywhere? Do template preferences change between countries? What design elements feel universal? The French market reveals something crucial. Language changes how people interact with design software. But visual communication stays consistent. A well-designed template looks good whether you speak English or French. This insight will later become central to Canva's global strategy. Here's where Melanie's psychology background pays off again. She's not just tracking what users do, she's understanding why they do it. French schools spend more time customizing colors. Australian schools focus on layout changes. New Zealand schools prefer simpler templates. Each behavior pattern reveals deeper truths about design preferences. Schools start requesting new features. Can they create posters for events?
This part of the program is sponsored by Via Nature, where nature meets innovation. Visit vianature.com. Your planet-friendly goodies are just a click away.
Design programs for graduation. Make certificates for students. Suddenly, yearbook software is being used for everything. The templates designed for yearbooks work perfectly for other projects. But here's the moment that changes everything. A teacher in Western Australia uploads photos from a school event, uses yearbook templates to create a poster advertising the next event. The result? It looks completely professional. better than expensive design agencies could produce, and it took her 15 minutes. Melanie stares at this poster on her screen. The teacher didn't think of herself as a designer. She just needed to solve a problem. The templates gave her confidence. The interface made creation feel easy. The result looked like professional work. That's when it hits her. This isn't yearbook software. This is design democratization. Every template, every drag and drop interaction, every one-click effect. They're not just making yearbooks easier. They're making design accessible to everyone. Fusion Books had taught her the formula. Start with templates that already look good. Make customization feel like play, not work. Remove every barrier between ideas and execution. Focus on results, not processes. She starts sketching new possibilities. Logo creation, social media graphics, business cards, presentations, all using the same principles she'd discovered through yearbooks. Simple interfaces, beautiful templates, instant results. The laboratory experiment was complete. She'd proven that complex design tasks could become simple when the tools prioritized user experience over professional features. Now she just needed to convince the world. But that would prove harder than she ever imagined. Every investor rejection broke Melanie's heart, but it was also building something they couldn't see, the perfect understanding of her market. Picture the scene. Conference room after conference room. Melanie and Cliff Obrecht sitting across from venture capitalists. The same presentation slides, the same passionate explanation about democratizing design. And then, the same response. Adobe already owns design. Why would anyone need this? The rejections came fast. 100 of them over 3 years. Each no felt like a punch to the gut. But here's what nobody realizes. These weren't random rejections. They revealed a massive blind spot in how Silicon Valley thought about creativity. Every investor asked the same question. How do you compete with professional designers? Melanie would lean forward, try to explain. She wasn't targeting professionals. She was targeting the millions of people who avoided design tasks completely. The small business owners, the teachers, the students, the parents making birthday invitations. But investors couldn't see them. They'd interrupt her pitch. Adobe Creative Suite has everything covered. They'd pull up market research about professional design software, show her charts about graphic designer salaries, prove that design was already solved. Here's the twist that breaks your heart. Melanie would leave these meetings questioning herself. Maybe they were right, maybe she was missing something obvious. The doubt crept in during long car rides home. Late nights staring at her laptop screen, wondering if she was delusional. But then she'd remember the crying students, the teacher who created that perfect poster in 15 minutes, the thousands of people using Fusion Books who'd never touched Photoshop. They existed. They needed this. Even if investors couldn't see them, each rejection forced her to refine her message. She started timing how long it took normal people to create simple designs in Photoshop versus her prototype. 20 minutes for a business card in Photoshop. 2 minutes in her system. The data was compelling, but investors still didn't get it. One particularly brutal meeting stands out. A prominent VC literally laughed at her pitch. You want to compete with Adobe? Good luck with that. He dismissed her before she could explain the difference between professional designers and everyday users. The meeting lasted 12 minutes. Walking out of that office, Melanie felt destroyed. But something else happened too. Clarity. If this investor couldn't see the market, neither could Adobe. Neither could any of the existing design companies. They were all focused on the same small group of professionals. The psychology became fascinating. Each rejection validated her thesis. The design industry was so focused on experts, they'd ignored everyone else. Millions of people who needed design but weren't designers. This invisible market was hiding in plain sight. Think about it. Every small business needs marketing materials. Every teacher creates presentations. Every student makes projects. But they were all either hiring expensive designers or creating terrible designs themselves. Why? Because the tools assumed expertise they didn't have. Investors kept saying, the market isn't big enough. Wrong. They couldn't see the market at all. They were counting professional designers. Melanie was counting everyone who'd ever needed to create something visual. The difference was massive. She started seeking advice instead of explicitly asking for investment. This let her gather feedback without the pressure, refine her pitch, understand exactly who her users were, what they needed, how to communicate the vision better. The 3 years of rejections taught her something crucial. If investors couldn't see her market, her competitors couldn't either. This wasn't a disadvantage. It was camouflage. She could build in secret while everyone else ignored the opportunity. But the emotional toll was real. Doubt crept in constantly. What if she was wrong? What if there really wasn't a market for simple design tools?
This part of the program is sponsored by Pause Wars. Gear up for happy tales. Sniff out pausewars.com, where your pet's wag comes with a splash of style.
The nights were long, the uncertainty brutal. Yet each rejection also strengthened her conviction. Every no from Silicon Valley confirmed she was seeing something they missed. The disconnect between investor thinking and user reality became her competitive advantage. Each rejection was building something powerful. Perfect market understanding. Investor objections forced her to research user behavior more deeply, understand pain points more clearly, develop better solutions. Then something unexpected happened. Sometimes the answer comes from the last place you'd think to look. A tech conference in Perth, Australia. The last place you'd expect to find the key to Silicon Valley. 2012. Melanie sits in the back row of a startup competition. She's probably the youngest person there. Surrounded by suits and gray hair. Everyone else looks confident, established. She feels like she's pretending to belong. On stage, Bill Tai, Silicon Valley venture capitalist, judge for the competition. The kind of person who decides which startups live or die. This is her shot. One conversation could change everything. But how do you explain an invisible market to someone who's never seen it? The presentations end. People network over coffee. Melanie's heart pounds. She approaches Tai during the break. Most people would pitch features, technical specifications, market size projections. But Melanie does something different. She paints a picture of human frustration. She talks about the crying students, the small business owners who hire expensive designers for simple logos, the teachers creating ugly flyers because Photoshop terrifies them, the millions of people who have great ideas but no way to express them visually. She's not selling software. She's describing pain. Tai listens. Really listens. This isn't the usual startup pitch about better technology. This is about human behavior, about barriers that prevent creativity. Something clicks in his mind. This wasn't about building better design software. This was about democratizing creativity itself. Here's what makes Tai different from other investors. He doesn't just look at markets. He looks at human potential. While other VCs saw competition with Adobe, Tai saw liberation from Adobe's complexity. While others counted professional designers, Tai imagined millions of people who'd never considered themselves creative. The conversation lasts 20 minutes. By the end, Tai makes her an offer she never expected. Come to San Francisco. Meet some people. Let's see what we can build together. Melanie's hands shake as she accepts. 3 years of rejections. Now a Silicon Valley investor wants to help. But Tai's support goes beyond money. He becomes her guide into Silicon Valley's maze. The introductions, the connections, the unwritten rules of startup culture. Without him, she'd be another outsider trying to break in. With him, doors start opening. The first introduction changes everything. Lars Rasmussen, co-founder of Google Maps, the man who helped billions of people navigate the world. Tai brings them together over coffee in Palo Alto. Melanie explains her vision. Lars gets it immediately. He understands the power of making complex things simple. Lars doesn't just offer encouragement. He provides something more valuable: credibility. When the co-founder of Google Maps believes in your idea, other people pay attention. Silicon Valley runs on reputation. Lars gives Melanie instant status in circles that previously ignored her. But then comes the introduction that changes Canva's DNA forever. Lars knows someone perfect for Melanie's team. Cameron Adams, former Google employee, designer and engineer rolled into one. the technical co-founder she's been searching for without knowing it. Cameron's background is pure magic for what Canva needs. He understands design from a user perspective. He grasps engineering at Google scale. He's built products that millions of people use daily. Most importantly, he shares Melanie's obsession with simplicity. The chemistry between them is immediate, not romantic, professional. They both believe complex tools are creativity's enemy. They both want to democratize design. They both understand that most people don't want to become professional designers. They just want to solve problems that require design. Cameron brings something Melanie lacks: technical confidence. She knows what users need. He knows how to build it. She understands human frustration. He understands system architecture. Together they can turn vision into reality. The Perth conference becomes the domino that topples 3 years of rejection. One conversation with Ty, one introduction to Lars, one connection to Cameron. Suddenly Melanie has Silicon Valley advisors, technical expertise, and credibility she couldn't buy. Think about the irony. A Perth startup competition provided better networking than 3 years of pitching to VCs. Sometimes the biggest opportunities hide in the smallest places. But even with Silicon Valley connections and technical expertise, they still faced one massive problem: no funding. Every private investor still said no. The vision was clear. The team was strong. But the money, that would have to come from somewhere else entirely. The Australian government stepped in where private investors feared to tread. 2012. Canva finally gets its first investment, $1.6 million. But here's the twist that shocked everyone. It's not from Silicon Valley. It's not from venture capitalists. It's from the Australian government. The same bureaucrats that startup founders usually avoid. They just wrote the check that private investors wouldn't. Think about the irony. Venture capitalists get paid millions to spot the next big thing. They missed Canva completely. Government officials, supposedly the most risk-averse people in business, they saw the opportunity hiding in plain sight. Picture the moment Melanie gets the news. After 3 years of rejections from private investors, a government agency believes in her vision. The emotional whiplash is intense. Relief mixed with vindication. Maybe she wasn't crazy after all. Maybe the market really did exist. But here's where it gets interesting. The government's reasoning was completely different from private investor concerns. VCs worried about competing with Adobe. Government officials saw economic transformation. They weren't thinking about market share. They were thinking about job creation. The logic was brilliant in its simplicity. If Australians could compete with Adobe, it would create high-paying tech jobs. Export revenue would flow back to Australia. The country could become a design technology hub instead of just consuming American software. This wasn't just an investment. It was economic strategy. Government analysts had done something private investors hadn't. They'd looked beyond professional designers. They'd counted every small business owner who needed marketing materials, every teacher creating presentations, every student making projects. The numbers were staggering. Millions of people who could benefit from accessible design tools. Here's the part that makes your heart race. The government investment came with a matching fund structure. Their $1.6 million attracted an additional $1.4 million from private sources. Suddenly, Melanie had $3.2 million to build her dream. The government money acted like a magnet, pulling in private capital that had previously stayed away. The psychological shift was immediate and powerful. External validation changes everything. When venture capitalists reject you, doubt creeps in. But when a government invests taxpayer money, that's different. It means experts who studied your business model believe it can work. The confidence boost was intoxicating. But there's another side to government money. It comes with pressure that private investment doesn't have. These weren't just investors hoping for returns. These were public servants spending taxpayer funds. The expectations were clear. Create jobs, generate export revenue, build something that makes Australia proud. Melanie felt the weight immediately. This wasn't a startup experiment anymore. Real people's jobs depended on Canva's success. Australian taxpayers had invested in her vision. Failure would mean more than lost money. It would mean letting down an entire country that believed in her. The government officials understood something profound about democratizing creativity. They saw beyond individual users to economic impact. When millions of people can create professional designs themselves, they don't hire expensive agencies. When small businesses can make their own marketing materials, they save thousands of dollars. The multiplier effect was massive. The funding announcement created ripple effects Melanie hadn't expected. Tech journalists started paying attention. Other startups began approaching government programs. International investors wondered what Australian officials saw that they'd missed. The validation opened doors that 3 years of pitching hadn't touched. Yet the pressure was real and constant. Government money meant accountability, reports to file, milestones to hit, progress to demonstrate. Melanie had to prove the investment was wise, not just to her team or her users, but to taxpayers who'd never heard of her. The irony deepened as time passed. Private investors who'd rejected Canva started asking questions. Why did the government invest? What did they see? The same VCs who'd dismissed her vision began requesting meetings. Government validation had created private sector curiosity. Looking back, the government investment was the domino that toppled everything else. It provided credibility that private rejection had stolen, confidence that doubt had eroded, resources that bootstrapping couldn't match. Most importantly, it proved that Melanie's invisible market was real. Now came the real test. Building the product was one thing, but how do you get millions of people to actually use it? Melanie's answer was radical. Give it away for free. August 2013. Canva launches. The business world watches in horror as Melanie gives away her product for free. Her investors are panicking. Her competitors are laughing. Everyone thinks she's lost her mind. Every business expert says the same thing. How do you make money if everything is free? They point to failed startups that gave away too much. They cite basic economics about profit margins. They shake their heads at what seems like financial suicide. But Melanie has a different question. How do you change behavior? Think about it. She's not trying to maximize immediate revenue. She's trying to transform how millions of people think about design. Traditional software companies sell to professionals who already understand the value. Melanie needs to convince people who've never considered themselves creative. That requires a completely different approach. The freemium model isn't just about pricing, it's about psychology. But here's the terrifying reality keeping everyone awake at night. What if people never upgrade? What if they take the free features and never pay a cent? The fear is real and justified. Freemium had killed companies before, but Melanie sees something others miss. Free users aren't just customers who haven't paid yet, they're evangelists. Every design they create and share becomes marketing for Canva. Every social media post, every presentation slide, every business card, all of it carries Canva's invisible signature. Watch the network effect unfold. Someone creates a beautiful Instagram post using Canva. Friends see it. How did you make this? They ask. The creator feels proud. I made it myself in 5 minutes. Suddenly, design feels accessible instead of intimidating. Curiosity spreads like wildfire. Here's where traditional business thinking breaks down. Professional designers charge hundreds for logos. Small business owners can't afford that, but they don't need perfection. They need something good enough. Something that makes them feel proud instead of embarrassed. Canva gives them that feeling for free. The psychology runs deeper than most people realize. When someone creates their first professional-looking design, something changes inside them. They start thinking, maybe I am creative after all. That emotional shift is worth more than any marketing campaign. It turns users into believers. But here's the brilliant part about the premium features. They're not about advanced tools or complex capabilities. They're about convenience and time saving for people who've already fallen in love with the platform. Background remover, that's not a professional feature. It's a convenience for people who are already hooked. Premium users aren't buying better design tools. They're buying time back, more templates, more storage space, priority support, the ability to resize designs instantly. These features matter most to people who use Canva constantly, who've already discovered how much it helps them. Think about how this flips traditional software economics. Adobe sells expensive licenses to a few professionals. Canva serves millions of amateurs. The math works when volume compensates for lower individual revenue, but only if you can actually reach those millions. The free tier acts like a massive funnel. It removes every barrier to trying the product. No credit card required. No trial periods that expire. No sales pressure. Just access to tools that actually work. This eliminates the biggest obstacle: fear of commitment. Small business owners can experiment without risk. Teachers can try it for one presentation. Students can test it for school projects. Each positive experience builds trust. Trust eventually converts to payment, but only after people understand the value personally. The waiting list before launch proves the strategy might work. Over 150,000 people signed up before seeing the actual product. Just the promise of simple design tools created massive demand. That's not normal software behavior. That's pent-up frustration finally finding hope. Each free user becomes a case study in behavior change. Do they come back? Do they create multiple designs? Do they share their work? Do they invite friends? The data reveals something powerful. People aren't just using Canva. They're integrating it into their lives. Melanie understood that changing behavior was more valuable than immediate revenue. Free users become passionate advocates. They transform from people who avoid design into people who create constantly. But there was one problem with this strategy. It was about to put her on a collision course with the most powerful design company in the world. Adobe had 30 years, billions in revenue, and the best designers in the world. Canva had templates and a 26-year-old CEO. The battle lines were drawn. 2014. Canva's user numbers climbed steadily. Small businesses discover they can create logos in minutes. Teachers make beautiful presentations without crying. Students design posters that actually look professional. But in San Jose, California, Adobe executives aren't worried. They should be terrified. This isn't a fair fight by any measure. Adobe owns enterprise contracts worth millions. Professional designers worship their tools. They have unlimited resources and decades of market dominance. But here's the twist that changes everything. They're fighting the wrong war entirely. Adobe keeps adding features for professionals. More brushes in Photoshop, advanced color grading in Premiere, complex vector tools in Illustrator. Each update makes their software more powerful and more intimidating. They're solving problems that only experts have. Meanwhile, Melanie is creating experts out of complete beginners. Think about the strategic differences. Adobe sells complexity as power. Master our 500 features and you'll be unstoppable. Learn our keyboard shortcuts and you'll work faster. Understand our advanced tools and you'll create masterpieces. It's a beautiful promise for the 1% of people willing to invest years learning their systems. Canva sells something completely different. Simplicity as freedom. Create beautiful designs in minutes, not months. Feel proud of your work immediately. Express your ideas without technical barriers. Adobe asks people to become designers. Canva lets people feel like designers right away. The user behavior Adobe missed seems obvious now. People don't want to become professional designers. They want to solve problems that require design. The small business owner needs a quick flyer. The teacher wants engaging slides. The student creates a project poster. None of them dream of mastering Photoshop. They just want results. Here's where Canva's template revolution becomes genius. Instead of teaching people to design, give them designs they can customize. A logo template with placeholder text. A social media graphic ready for new photos. A presentation layout that already looks professional. People don't learn design principles. They just plug in their content. The psychological impact is profound. Someone opens Canva, sees beautiful templates, clicks one, adds their business name, changes the colors, exports a logo. Total time, 3 minutes. They feel creative and capable. Adobe would require 3 months of training for the same result. Adobe's pricing model creates another barrier. Creative Cloud subscriptions cost hundreds annually. Small businesses calculate that expense against hiring freelancers. Often freelancers win, but Canva's freemium model removes that calculation entirely. Try it free. Upgrade only if you need more. The moment Adobe realizes the threat arrives slowly, then all at once. Small businesses stop buying Creative Suite licenses. Why pay for complex software when Canva is good enough? The enterprise contracts remain secure, but the smaller customers disappear quietly. Adobe's sales team starts hearing new objections. We tried Canva and it works fine. Our marketing person can create everything we need. Why would we pay for software nobody knows how to use? These aren't professional designers talking. These are the customers Adobe ignored. The competitive response reveals Adobe's blind spot. They launch Adobe Express, a simplified design tool. Templates included. Drag and drop interface. Sound familiar? But it's too late. Canva already owns the mindshare of non-designers. Adobe Express feels like an afterthought. Here's the irony that hurts. Adobe could have built Canva years earlier. They had better designers, bigger budgets, advanced technology, but they couldn't see past their professional user base. Success became a prison. Existing customers loved complexity. Why change? The template approach scales beautifully. Professional designers create gorgeous layouts once. Millions of users customize them thousands of times. Adobe makes professionals more productive. Canva makes non-professionals capable. The market for capable is much larger than the market for productive. By 2016, the war's outcome becomes clear. Adobe still dominates professional design, but professional design is a tiny fraction of all design needs. Canva captures everything else. Business cards, social media graphics, presentations, event flyers, birthday invitations, the stuff real people actually create. Melanie's secret strategy for competing against a company with 100 times more resources. She didn't compete with Adobe's strengths. She served Adobe's ignored market. The 99% of people who needed design but weren't designers. While Adobe made complex tools more complex, Canva made design disappear entirely. The numbers tell the story of what happened next. Today, Canva is valued at $25 billion as of 2023. Over 150 million people use it every month across 190 countries. Melanie Perkins proved that empathy isn't just good business, it's revolutionary business. The real lesson isn't about design software, it's about seeing invisible markets. The people everyone else ignores might be your biggest opportunity. While Adobe served professionals, Melanie served everyone else. The crying students, the frustrated teachers, the small business owners who just needed something good enough. Ask yourself, what hidden need are you solving that incumbents have overlooked? Sometimes the most obvious solutions are hiding in plain sight.